Hi everybody, this is Jim Akin. In this video we're going to take a look at the theory and practice of additive synthesis. Additive synthesis normally uses sine waves, and I have to give you a warning, which is that the video recording software that I'm using compresses the audio, and the result of that is that what you're going to hear in the video will not necessarily sound like sine waves. The audio will be somewhat degraded, and I have been unable to find a solution to this problem, so we're just going to have to live with it. What we're looking at here is Misty Phasor, which is an additive oscillator in VCV rack. It's perhaps the most complex and usable additive oscillator in the current lineup, but I would have to say that there are some things that it will do that we're not going to get into. We're not going to be talking about all of this stuff over here. We're just going to be talking about the main thing that happens in here. And when you first launch Phasor, you're going to see the phasor, the path, and the wave, which will look like this. So there's a nice sine wave, and it's nice visual candy, but I'm going to shut those things off again. I'm going to say we don't want to see the phasor, we don't want to see the path, and we don't want to see the wave. We're just going to look at the sine wave partial amplitudes. Each of these sliders allows you to adjust the amplitude of one of the sine wave partials in a composite tone. We're now listening to the fundamental. There's the second partial, an octave higher. This one's an octave and a fifth over the fundamental. 2 octaves over the fundamental. 2 octaves in a major third. And I'm going to zero all of the harmonics here. Okay. The thing that you will probably observe is that when I do that, your ear can still distinguish amongst the different harmonics. They don't seem to all be part of one tone, but when we start moving the pitch, you will find that the harmonics very quickly fuse into a single composite tone. You don't hear them separately so much anymore. We're going to look at that in a minute, but first I want to talk about one of the cool features down here, the frequency trims. These harmonics are all tuned to whole number multiples of the fundamental. For example, if I do this one, that's 2 octaves and a fifth above the fundamental, but I can use the frequency trim to make it out of tune. Well, I wanted to turn those off. All right, zero them all, please. Zero all magnitudes. There we go. This thing has a very large right-click menu, which you can do lots of things with. The thing I wanted to point out was that these harmonics are by default whole number multiples of the fundamental, but they don't have to be. You can mess with them. Another thing you might want to know if you're a VCV rack user is that double-clicking on these trims will not, in fact, center them. In order to center them, you have to go into the right-click menu, and you say zero all frequency trimmers, and now they're back where they belong. Let's look at how the separate sine waves in an additive synthesis oscillator can fuse in your ear to where they sound like a single tone. Now we're going to put in some nice overtones here. And your ear can probably distinguish those pretty well. You could say, yeah, there's that one. We're going to mute that, and we're going to play this same tone from a sequence that I've set up here. It's a little bit tricky of a sequence. These sequencers are only 8 steps long, but we're going to have a pattern that is more than 8 steps because I'm summing them, and I'm using this device over here, the Gate Sequencer 64, to create a rhythm. So it's going to sound like this. So as you can probably hear, you quickly lose the perception of those partials as separate events, and you hear a composite tone that has a nice, interesting tone quality. Oh, and this thing over on the right is a scope that requires 2 inputs, actually, to make any sense of it. So I'm inputting it from a sine wave over here. And that's the B input, which we're not hearing at the moment, but we're going to zero all of our magnitudes, and then we will bring this one up, and it's at a multiple of the, there we go. Now we have the fundamental here and the fundamental here, and you can make actually pretty patterns by bringing up various partials like that. Or you could detune one of them. Let's see what happens when we detune it. Oh, that's pretty too. So that's some of the visual candy that you can do with a VCV rack. Next, we'll take a quick look at some of the things that you can do by modulating the amplitudes of the various partials independently. What I have here is an 8 output LFO in which the 8 outputs are at different phases in relation to one another. There's only one LFO rate knob, but each of these outputs is a little bit different in its phase. And they're patched into the magnitude CV inputs here. So as I turn the trim pots up, you're going to see that the magnitudes of the partials will increase in command of the LFO. So let's give that a try. That's just the fundamental. If you were to use that tone as the output of a stepped sequence pattern, you would hear that every note would have a slightly different timbre to it. Instead of using an LFO or possibly multiple LFOs to control the amplitudes of the various partials, we might want to use envelope generators. And here I have a bank of 4 envelope generators. This one is functioning as the VCA, so it will control the overall loudness of the composite tone. These 3 are patched into the trim inputs for the magnitudes of various of the partials. Let's add another one just for kicks. All right, there you go. No, that's the trigger. We want that. All right. Now, when I start the sequence running, you'll hear what happens. Now I'm going to increase the decay on this one. And depending on what it's patched to over here, different of the partials will last longer. That's not bad. Let's increase this one. Let's keep that one short. We can also add delay if we wanted to. This gets a little weird. Probably not too useful, but you can do it. One thing that you will hear in this is that I'm patching the odd harmonics to the left channel and the even harmonics to the right channel. So we do get a stereo image in which the harmonics are spread across the stereo field.
Stereo field.